So, as a lot of you know, the new American Horror Story Season 10 filming has just begun for it. So there's been several speculations and everybody's trying to figure out what the new theme is. It's been delayed a couple of times due to the pandemic, and we finally have some information. We know that the name Pilgrim has been possibly talked about and maybe used. We know that the season will be shot in Provincetown, and a lot of people have many theories on what it's going to be about, what the theme is going to be, and Ryan Murphy, the creator, has said that nobody's guessed it, so I have some theories of my own. I had some theories about the Lady of the Dunes. I had read up on that, and people started releasing videos on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I make a video? And so I have some theories, especially on the time progression, because it's been said that this season, the way that it's going to be formatted is going to be different than any other season, the way that the time's going to be. So I have some theories on what they mean by that. So stay tuned if you want to hear more. The first theory that I have is going to be about the time progression and the way that the season's going to run. We've had seasons before where we kind of like focus on just one character. We've had Roanoke where it kind of breaks the fourth wall for us, and it shows them filming a show, and it shows actors and people who experienced the phenomena. We've seen Murder House where everything is kind of showing, like each episode flashes to a certain scene and then we see the present day. But when I was looking into the history of Provincetown, there's so many creepy stories, like 1600s all the way to 1974. I found information about this town. So I think that the way that the time progression is going to work for this season is that we're going to see an episode that takes place literally during the 1600s. So it's going to show, like, for example, the Pilgrim, some sort of Pilgrim story, and then that whole episode is going to be about that. And then maybe the next episode is going to be a present day 1984-74 episode. So we're literally going to follow the story of different timelines. That's what I think it's going to show. So it's going to be flashback and present day, but both stories are going to be super ongoing, and we're going to follow them. So it's basically going to be a non-linear narrative. So it's going to flash, but it's not going to be chronological, but it's going to flash between present day and past, so that we'll get the information of both of these times at the same time, if that makes sense. And with that being said, I believe that there will be some characters that can flash through both times, or will be present in both times, 1600s and now. So these characters, they can actually break the time loop, and they exist in both. It would be like, whether it be through witchcraft or through some other form, a character, a siren maybe, I don't know, a character will be able to appear in both times and communicate with both sets of characters and influence both times. Sarah Paulson had said that the time is going to be different than anything we've ever seen, and Angelica Ross mentioned something about, it's interesting because her character is going to be able to interact with so many different characters, and it's interesting how she's able to do that. So her saying that kind of supports my theory that it'll be past times and it'll be present times, and maybe she'll be the deity or the type of creature, character, person that can travel in between both. Maybe the Witch of Wallfleet, I'll explain that later, and she can travel through both times. So that's how I believe they're going to do this. Like, we're going to see a 1600 Old English story, and we're going to see present day Cape Cod summer in one series. So the timeline dates back to the 1600s. Provincetown is the landing of the Mayflower. It's where the Pilgrims first came to turn America into what it is now. They were traveling, and they were familiar with the tribes in these areas. They've been to these areas before, the colonial people. They came across the Wampanoag, I don't know if I'm saying that right, tribe of Native American people. They kind of knew the colonists as people that would just take from them a little bit. They'd take their corn, things like that, so they were pretty wary of these people. One day, the settlers, as they took off, Their ship somehow got shipwrecked. There was a storm, and they landed on what is present-day Plymouth Plantation. The Native American Wampanoag tribe knew this area, and there was a village there that was decimated with disease, plague. There was basically a bunch of dead Native American bodies all over. When the settlers saw this, they thought, oh, this is a sign from God that we're meant to be here, not Native American people. So they decided to inhabit this area, and it became Plymouth. The Wampanoag tribe knew this village, and they actually believed it to be desecrate because it was plagued with evil, disease, tragedy. It was a cursed land, and the Pilgrims settled there. It has ancient roots. It's a cursed area. It kind of reminds me of the idea of Roanoke. Next, we'll talk about 1676. This is the time of King Philip's War. The Wampanoag and the colonial people finally fight it out for the land, and actually is known as the bloodiest war in U.S. history. This area became known as Bridgewater Triangle, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, where it's haunted. Horrible things happened in this area because it was so brutal and bloody that it's just cursed. And there's been UFO sightings. People have seen strange human-like shadow people dwell in this area. They've seen thunderbirds, which is like a pterodactyl basically. Random war fires, you know, like back in the day when they would fight. Bridgewater Triangle also is home to a swampy area called the Hobbamook Swamp, and there's a creature there named the Hobbamook, and the Native Americans believe that it resides there, and it's like a troll-like Bigfoot creature, so there's that. The creature is also referred to as a pukwudgie. There's a university, Barnstable University, located in this triangle. The university is haunted, so maybe they'll show old hauntings, present-day hauntings, and shadow people. They say that there's been animal mutilation. They've seen like cow body parts and things like that in the area, so they believe that maybe cultists like to go out there and do crazy things. We all know that Ryan Murphy loves to feature cult-like behavior, cult-like activities, and it may play a part since it's so close to Provincetown. Also, the red-haired hitchhiker is known to dwell in these areas. And then we get into the 1800s. In Provincetown, there were pirates in Cape Cod. The most famous pirate is Black Sam, Samuel Bellamy, and his story is quite known throughout Cape Cod. He sailed through those areas, and his lover, Goody Harlot, or Maria Harlot, spent time in the jail in this area, and I believe the jail is one of the most haunted places in America. And it's said that Maria, a Provincetown woman, she was about 15 years old, and she met Black Sam, and they fell in love, and they had a night of, you know, they had a little dalliance, and she got pregnant. Pirates weren't the best of people. Black Sam wasn't the most revered man, so she was actually exiled from her village. Some stories say that she was sent to the jail and she lost her mind there. Some stories say that her child died and she lost her mind in the middle of the dunes. She was exiled, gave birth to her child in the dunes, and she cried for her lover to come back. So her cries can be heard throughout those dunes. So it's kind of like a scary woman in the dunes. The story that I was most privy to is that when she was exiled, she was upset over Black Sam. He was with her one evening and left, and told her he would come back and return to her one day with riches. When he left, they discovered she was pregnant, and she suffered greatly, and he didn't come back for years and years and years. They say that during this time, she grew mad and she grew depressed, and she actually cried one evening and she gave her soul to the devil. She wanted Black Sam to suffer. She developed powers, supernatural powers, and she's known as the Witch of Wallfleet, and her cries and her spells and her curses could be heard throughout all the dunes, and she was a pretty scary lady. One day, a ship wrecked on the shore of Cape Cod, and it was none other than Black Sam's ship, the Whydah, and they discovered only 2 bodies. His body was never discovered. So people say that she made that happen. She became the Witch of Wallfleet. Maybe Angelica Ross may play Maria Harlot. I'm not sure. Goody Harlot. And she may be the Witch of Wallfleet, the character that's able to time progress. The Whydah Galley, the ship, is actually in Provincetown. It's a known artifact. It was shipwrecked. It was never found. But in 1984, Barry Clifford, he found a map, which was in an old book, of the crash of the ship. It was basically an old pirate map, and this map led him to the shipwreck. It's been confirmed that the Whydah Galley is the ship that shipwrecked. It was Black Sam's pirate ship, and Black Sam's body was never found. Provincetown has a huge pirate history, huge pirate lore. Pirates have never been a source of conversation throughout American Horror Story, and they did exist, and they involve fog and the seas and the high tide. Maybe this theory may come to fruition. This theory is something that I discovered kind of randomly, but I think that it could be what this season's going to be about. The legend of the Marsh People is said to go all the way back to the 1800s, so it might appear during those times as well. The Marsh People, there's not very much information on them. It's an urban legend. In the 1970s, it said that in the dark marshes of Barnstable off the coast of Cape Cod, there have been sightings of dark and strange human-like creatures. Sounds pretty creepy, right? This is an image of some marshes where they can be found, and this is a picture Ryan Murphy posted on his Instagram. Looks kind of similar. Sounds like an American Horror Story theme to me. Derek Bartlett, the founder of the Cape and Islands Paranormal Research Society, actually talks about his encounter with these creatures in 2002. He was looking at the tides of the Cape Cod during the night, one of these stormy nights, and he swears that he saw, through his night scope vision, shadow figures. I know we heard that already. Shadow people, shadow figures. But the thing is, he says that they appeared solid in figure, but black as the mud that they came out of. He saw them during high tide, and he saw them just walk in the water. They weren't on a canoe, they were just walking, and they looked like human shadowy figures, but they appeared very solid. He believes through his studies that they are cyclical, which means that they only appear during certain cycles or during certain phases, which has been a theory and has been something that we've talked about for this season. They've said that the creature may be something that comes out every summer, every couple years, every full moon, something like that. So these creatures are cyclical, and they come out every 5 years. So maybe this series will show the span of each 5 years when these creatures came out during different times. And they may have very, very sharp teeth. There was an image that appeared of like hands, so maybe these hands could be those people. There was some images of like lab testing. It looked like some sort of lab thing inside the mouth of a sharp mouth. It could be one of the Marsh People's mouths, and the people testing them or studying them, trying to figure out what they are. Other information about the Marsh People, they're said that they can carry heavy things into the water, and they just take them in there and you don't even hear anything. They can take things as heavy as a horse and they just suck it into the water and there's no trace of it. Also, the contortionist that they hired for this season, the way that he moves and his figure and everything kind of is reminiscent of these Marsh People, in my opinion, so it supports the theory. The latest clue that Ryan Murphy posted looks like a marsh person. Dating back to the 1800s, they might be related to the Witch of Wallfleet. Maybe they're the creatures that she gets when she gives her soul to the devil, and maybe they help her drown Black Sam. So now we fast forward all the way into the 1970s. Sirens. That's the story of the Lady of the Dunes. That's when all of that stuff happened. So that story, I'm not sure if everybody has seen what happened there, but basically there was a body found on the shore of Cape Cod, and it was a woman in blue jeans, a blue bandana, only her head was severed, her hands were dismembered, and they were gone from the scene, and she was brutally murdered. That case was never solved. Nobody ever knew who the woman was, and they say that her cries can be heard throughout the dunes. So it's another story of a woman's cries, but I don't think that's the woman in question. Many of you are pretty familiar with Ryan Murphy and the things that he loves to talk about. And one of these things, serial killers, they're used a lot. Richard Ramirez was talked about in the last one, Eileen Wuornos, James March. Yeah, he follows a lot of cult leaders, and he follows a lot of these, very famous American awful murder stories. So there is a very famous serial killer in the 1970s named Tony Costa, and he was from Provincetown, Cape Cod area, and he killed up to 8 women, but he was convicted for killing 2 of them. This is going to get pretty vulgar. His case was internationally known, and it got a lot of coverage because he killed people in a very, very brutal way. So he dismembered their entire body, like by all the joints, and he would sever their heads. And one big part of what he used to do is he had removed all the hearts of the women that he killed. Their hearts were never found. The bodies were found with teeth marks. This is when Provincetown got marked Helltown. Pretty scary name for a place. And he was known as the vampire of Helltown because of the teeth marks and because of removing the hearts. He never talked about what he did with the hearts. Pretty creepy. The story is something that Ryan Murphy might think is creepy enough to include in AHS. That being said, the Lady of the Dunes murder was never solved, and I personally, when I was doing my research, believe that maybe Mr. Costa had something to do with this because her body was pretty dismembered. It was during the same timeline, so yeah. The last piece of this theory is sirens. As we know, sirens have been discussed a lot. They may not be part of this season, but I still have some hope because if pirates will play a role, sirens may play a role as well. As we know, they would lure ships with their beautiful song into shipwrecks. They would lure them off the shore. There'd be no trace of the ship. They were seductresses. They had sharp teeth, and they were involved with pirates a lot. So if the pirate theory pans true, sirens may be included in that. And also, sirens are pretty mythological, and it's a pretty old creature, so they may be included in the 1600s theories as well. They're human-like creatures, they're in the water, they're in murky waters, they appear in high tide. A lot of times they relate to the moon a lot. They could be cyclical creatures depending on moon cycles. And another thing that I know about them that I don't think people have really talked about is that they can appear completely human. So they can take the form of a human girl, of a human, and they're very seductive. They can lure basically any man onto the shore, into the water, and kill them pretty easily. So I think that maybe they will appear human at times, and they'll basically walk onto shore, and they'll walk amongst the people, and they'll lure them into the water and turn into their creature-like body. They might be the things that are being tested on in the labs that we saw. So it might be sirens, and if this is true, I don't think people have talked about the fact that they might just look like completely human when they want to, and they might lure the people into the water in that way. I think that a lot of the female leads, because there's so many huge female leads that are going to be in this series, maybe they will appear as sirens. Sarah Paulson has said that her hair color is a color that she's never had before in real life or in a show. So that leads me to believe it might be something outrageous. Sirens have purple hair, blue hair, green hair, maybe, And Lily Rabe also said that the character that she's playing is something she's never done before, and it's something that she's having a lot of fun doing. Usually when actors say like, oh, I'm having a lot of fun with this role, it's usually something bad. So maybe she's a seductress, maybe she's a siren, but either way, even if sirens are not incorporated, I'm making a theory that Lily Rabe's character is going to be something pretty evil, pretty crazy. I'm excited about that. And she also said that longtime fans are going to be really, really happy about this season. So I think that being with all the hauntings and like the scary houses and buildings and stuff in this season, maybe it will relate back all the way to Murder House. That's what I think. It also might relate to the UFOs in Asylum, but I really, really doubt that. I think Murder House is more likely, and all the story of Tate and all that crazy stuff, you know, I think that might be part of it. And Ryan Murphy also likes to give us satisfaction. He knows we love Coven, so I think all that might come back in. Frances Conroy, I believe her name is back in this season. She's a Coven favorite, so I'm excited. But yeah, I think Marsh People, Sirens, Pirates, these are my biggest theories, and of course the colonists, the settlers, the cursed land, all of it sounds super AHS-y. And the time progression, that's a huge one. I really, really, really believe that that's how this series is going to go. So I'll go ahead and release more videos of what I think, and I'll definitely make this more reasonable because I know I'm everywhere with it, but anything could be right. So I just want to put it all out there. Thanks for watching. Also, Cape Cod area is very famous for their LGBTQ community, so I think drag queens and LGBTQ-based characters are going to be huge. The creatures also common. What? Baby, I need to sit here and do my video.